Yo, this is your boy Omega Katana, back with a new episode of the Omega Dimension podcast, and this is what I call you again, BJ or
DJ's fine, or DK Chew is what I go
yeah,
by.
yeah, that Kikachu. Okay, I just call you BJ. No disrespect or anything like that.
Or just that guy from Zionic.
Yeah, or the guy who translates non-Japanese only Gundam material, which the fandom's really grateful for. So before we can, I'll give this Mr. Zionic here an introduction for what he does. I gave a little short introduction in the description, but it'd be best when he does it.
For me. Well,
Yeah,
hi everybody. I'm the brains, the brawn, the bozo, whatever you want to call me, behind the group that is known as Zionic Scanlations. I've been doing it for almost 20 years now, I think.
Damn.
I lost track of time. It was somewhere when I first started college after high school. So,
Oh, come on. Internet connection issues. Sorry about that, people. It's like some internet connection issues when people just or webcam issues or something like that. Because normally, what he does is basically like, I'm really sorry about that. It's just like you're in like some webcam connections. I'm really sorry about that because it's really terrible when that stuff happens. If it's easier for you, is you can just turn off your webcam. If it's like a total bitch when stuff happens like that. Yeah.
I'll just pop in and out randomly.
Yeah.
Is he there? Is he not there?
Yeah. Yeah. It was starting to get really interesting too how you began your journey and everything, and it wasn't easy, let alone cheap.
No, I started off, God, because I got into Gundam probably, I think it was with Gundam Wing with, everybody here in America, but it actually started a little bit before that. I had a couple of the Gundam 0083 comics that Viz had put out, and I had no idea what it was. I think my mom had found it at a garage sale or something like that. So those just kicked around my house for the longest time. And I remember coming home from school and I kept forgetting that, Toonami was on and stuff like that. So I'd catch things here and there, recorded on VHS and stuff, and have no idea what was going on, and just wandered around my house lamenting the actions of Trays and Zex and stuff like that. And my mother would just give me weird side-eyed glances and stuff like that. Like, who are you? You're not my child. So, I signed up on the Gundam.com message boards, and this was late 2000, early 2001. And finding out that there was more series out there than what was on TV was, blew my mind at the time. And so I tried, getting into that, and there was roadblocks at the time because there wasn't a whole lot of information out there. I mean, you had old sites, and there were some of us that were just talking in a conversation, a private message on Twitter here, lamenting about the nostalgia of days past. We had, the Gundam.com forums. There was Burkrook's Mecha Domain, which existed before MAHQ took over the Mecha Stats and stuff like that. And then later on with sites like Gundam Watch and stuff like that for discussions for, the nitty gritty technical and, detailed conversations and stuff like that. But, I was always that person that asked 40 million questions, and that's kind of how I just, got to know things. And I found out that there were reference books and stuff like that out there, and completely oblivious to the fact that it was in a foreign language at the time. And I remember, I think the very first book I ever ordered was one of the character encyclopedias. And my mother at the time, bless her soul for trying to protect me, was like against me buying stuff online. So I used a pseudonym, and I remember the UPS driver dropped it off, and my mom refused the package because she's like, nobody lives here with that name. So I was like all heartbroken, and I'm like calling UPS trying to get it back and running after him down the street and stuff like that just to get my my book, and sadly I don't have that one anymore. I think it got cut up when I was starting to scan stuff in quite a while ago.
Damn,
But
that's rare.
yeah, part of me wants to. I think it might still be at my mom's somewhere, filed away in the attic with some of the stuff that I didn't bring with me. But
Right.
I kept asking questions and finding out more and more that I could. And I had a bit of a checkered past back then. I was very big on Gundam scripts at the time, so it was a lot of the raw subtitle scripts that would be transferred to like the old VHS tapes and stuff like that for the fan club circles and stuff like that. Nice. So I was very keen on tracking those down. And then after, I graduated high school and stuff like that and grew up, I, started learning the language and stuff like that to find out more. And that's when I put together a group, and we started with Gundam Sentinel back in 2004, which was our first, major project. And at the time, the person I was working with, I think it was Laethanol was their name. We took over from an old group called.
Oh man, sorry about that. Like basically, it's like device. I hate it when this happens. When especially it's like when I'm on. It was like really interesting. Like basically when he gets back on. Oh, there he's back on. Sorry about that again.
There we go.
Here we go. Thank God I'm going to edit this afterwards. It's just a live action. I'm just going to get it. I'm going to download this so I can edit the mistakes out and whatnot. So this is like both the live streams, a basic bonus. Right. You feel me there? And you're at the part where you first translated Gundam Sentinel. Love the book. Been a while since I read it, but it's one of my favorite mobile suits. Despite its model kit being a pain in the ass to build, till I just gave up.
That's one that I wanted to get, but I saw it and I was just like, nah, because I don't have a good track history when it comes to building model kits and stuff like that. And it's a terrible memory from my social studies class when I was assembling a Messerschmitt and just rubber cement everywhere that I could not cover up with paint no matter how hard I tried.
Yep. I prefer the snap build ones. So anyways, about Gundam Sentinel.
So we had started that. We were working with the translator, except we were doing it from Chinese to English at the time. And someone had actually asked me if I would give Crossbone Gundam any consideration. And I noticed, I think at the time there was like 6 groups that had put out the same, it was like 4 or 6 chapters, or like the first 2 volumes of the series at least. And no one else did anything else after that. And it was so weird. And I couldn't figure out why. So I hit the auction circuits and tracked it down for a couple of them. And then I think I found 2 or 3 of the volumes at a convention in Toronto when I had gone. So we started on that project. And then by the time we got done, I think that's where the joke started that I turned into the anti-Crossbone guy, because I was a bit disappointed with the ending, because it was one of those fabled series like
people praise it to no end. People like that reputation and whatnot. It's like, this is the best spin-offs of all time and whatnot, and you checked it out and it was disappointing.
And it's like it was that whole notion of the mystery behind it, because very few people had seen anything past the first couple of volumes. So it was kind of like, oh, well, this first part is so good, so that means the latter half of it's going to be even better. And I'm not saying that it wasn't terrible. It was a bit odd. And I mean, now when I go back and look at it, after translating the original draft that Tamino had presented to Hasegawa with his ideas and stuff like that, and seeing just how much he changed, I don't want to say it reinforced my disappointment with it, but it showed that it could have tied in, I think, at least a little bit better to the movie than what came out.
I find one.
But yeah, so I sort of kept up with the joke, and I've made comments, especially with like Ghost and Dust and stuff like that, but most of it's a ruse. I bought the RG Crossbone Gundam not that long ago. I'm just waiting for it to come. So when I put it together and post a picture of it, I'm sure I'll probably get all sorts of flack for it.
Yep, it's your first model kit, and RGs are not that easy. Speaking of RGs, I thought I got in a high G of the Strike Freedom, and
Mhm.
it took me for like almost 2 weeks to build it. I was almost halfway done. I lost a miniature piece to the point
Mhm.
I just gave up because basically I can't complete the kit,
Mhm.
which is
I did
heartbroken.
the I did the RG Sazabi because my partner had did the new Gundam for me, and I think the one part that was I'm looking at it now. I think I lost the mono eye again, but the part with the visor was like the most finicky, and I think I actually asked people about it on Twitter at one point if it was just me and I warped something or if it was just that loose. I'm like, oh, this is why
Yeah.
I don't do this.
Yeah. I had that feeling with advancer kits. I mostly stick to the SD ones and the high
Mhm.
grades
Mhm.
because I'm not that skilled. Even though I have like experience of building model kits
Mhm.
and my parents support me building those, I have like this. Excuse me, let me show my camera here. I have like this tool set here. Basically, what
Mhm.
it's for to make model kit building a lot more easier, really helpful. But with master grades and whatnot, no. Short attention
Yeah,
span and crap. I can't take it.
right. Cut the wrong nub off and you're screwed.
Yep. Or just when you went to put a wrong part and try to like reverse it to the right side, it's a pain in the
Mhm.
butt.
Yeah, I've
So
put many a legs together the wrong way without realizing it.
yep, and it sucked big time. Also, so already you already got through the first question here, despite some little hiccups here and there. So I'll start with number 3 here. What made you go on the path of fan translating Japanese only Gundam material and finding Xeonic scanlations? Or we went through that already.
Partially. I think part of it has to do. I mean, I have like an innate desire to learn more things, and I've always been that type of person to ask questions, to find more pieces of the puzzle, to see the bigger picture of things and stuff like that. And that was part of what it had to do with Gundam. Because I would read on the old forums and stuff like that. Um, a lot of the things, like especially the 1 Year War and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
just finding out snippets of information that wasn't animated. And even at the time, I think around when Girin's Greed was first coming out, one of the old moderators of the forum, I think he went by Shin Matsunaga, had posted the opening animation to Girin's Greed with the translation of it, and I was just so enamored by it. I'm like, holy crap! And so I, wanted to find out more, and that was basically it because there was no, you know, Gundam wiki back in the
Nope.
day. I mean, you had everybody who had like an Angel Fire site, the Geocities, Tripod, things like that.
Damn, that's really old. Haven't heard those in a long time, man.
I'm showing my
2000.
age probably.
Yep, yes, you are. It was before my time being on the internet. But I remember Angel's Fire and Geosites and whatnot. I was at the very tail end of it, around like 2010 when I started being active in the internet
Mhm.
because my parents are like very like pickety when I go to the unsupervised on the internet because of predators and
Yeah,
whatnot. And those, yeah,
my mom was the same way.
yeah,
Funny how parents are like that.
news reports and whatnot. They know better, but now we're grown up. Now we understand.
Right. Overprotectiveness. It's like you hated it at the time, but now you look back and you're like, thanks, mom.
Thanks, mom. Thanks, dad. So Resident back reminding about the good old days of the old school net. But back in the
Mhm.
day, I used to go through Wikipedia articles and whatnot. Yes, call me a pleb then, but seeing stuff on the internet without Twitter and whatnot and social media, I was
Mhm.
like, holy crap, this stuff is awesome. I looked at some stuff on YouTube before
Mhm.
Bandai began their crusade against Gundam Media on their site. You know how they
Mhm.
get with copyright content. So
Right.
I looked up Gundam F91. I looked up some game intros that are animated, like you said, with Girin's Greed, and also with what's that one Gundam side story? I don't remember its name. They have a bunch of side stories about these a father and son. My memory's fogged. That were on two different sides of the war. It's a game or something like that. An animated
Was it
intro.
Missing Link?
I think so. I think that's Missing Link.
Something.
Yeah. and I was
Central Link?
enamored
I
by the
forget.
animation. Yes, I was
Mhm,
enamored by the animation, and it was so badass.
mhm,
And normally, I'm mostly a UC diehard, prefer the 1 Year War stuff. Call me a pleb Gundam fans, but I like all Gundam mobile suits and whatnot. But
mhm,
the 1 Year War and the Universal Century is my favorite era of Gundam.
mhm.
That aged well the most as well. Because I'm going to get off a topic here, but it still involves Gundam. Don't you find it frustrating that Sunrise just drops your alternative universe stuff that isn't Cosmic Era?
I think I think they've run their course with the Cosmic Era. I mean, it was when it came out at the time. That was the
Cool.
original Gundam for the 21st century, sort of
Yeah.
redone. But and especially too with like the Seed movie coming out, which at this point I'm still rolling my eyes and saying I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
Because I think we're coming up on a year now again since there was any any news
News.
tidbits about it. But it's like it was great. It was awesome. I mean, everybody was talking about it. And as the series was airing, that was another one of the major projects that I did. I think it was around the time of Destiny, was the Destiny Astray manga. And I
Yeah.
remember every month like trying to find uh, news bites or scans and stuff like that before my issues would come in the mail to talk about it. And I remember that series just reaching its climax, and the whole assault by the Testament Gundam and stuff like that, and everyone in the community at the time was like, what the heck, like what's going on with this, that came out of left field and all this. And I just lost my train of thought. That went off the track so fast.
That's okay. That's
Anyways,
okay.
it's I think that was sort of like I want to say like the apex of the side stories there, because when Delta rolled out, it's like they dropped, oh, here we've got the envoys from Mars coming to help with things. And then you had Stargazer, which was awesome.
I
you
love
know.
that. The best Cosmic Era spinoff,
Mhm.
my opinion.
And then you ended up going with like Frame Ashtrays and some of the other ones. And like Frames was just so weird because it's like you basically have every color of the rainbow now. I mean, you've got red, blue, gold, and then they came out with the
Pink.
green. Just yeah, and it just you kill off a supposedly predominant MSV character from the series in the most hokiest of ways, and it made me wonder if they just didn't care at that point. And it's sort of like that now too. I don't know if you watched the Seed Eclipse videos that they have on Gundam Info's
Yes.
channel or not.
Yeah, I lost
Even
track of those.
even that is a bit out there too, especially now. But then again, if you look at it too, it's like as time goes on, mobile suits look more and more detailed, look more and more advanced than they did, at the time
Back
they
in the day.
originally came out and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to, give an accurate assessment sometimes. But with that whole alternative universe, it's like I felt it started off well, but then the side stories kind of started eclipsing the main stories.
Yeah.
And then the side stories kind of imploded because they ran out of things they
Stuff.
could potentially do without impacting the, major, timeline events and stuff like that. So that's why
Yeah.
I sit and I look and I'm like, what are you going to do for this movie that isn't going to be, a rehash of other
Gundam stuff.
established works, or that you're not just gonna traipse along with another trope of, oh, here's another clone, or this person was lurking in the shadows the entire time, you just didn't see him, or something like that.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. To me, the
But it'll
Cosmic
have
Era.
TM Revolution, so that'll make all the
Yeah.
worthwhile for it.
I just care about the mobile suits, to be honest. But you got a good point with using the Cosmic Era for example, because it eclipses like the main material, which and then it imploded on itself because it ran out of material, and the creators of that one didn't care anymore. So let's just add some more mobile suits and over the topness for more model kit sales and whatnot.
Right.
So I know Gundam 00 had some too, 00V or something like that. It was okay,
Mhm.
but Wing also had Glory of the Losers and After War. I forgot. I got one of the volumes of that one. Forgot its name. G
G Unit.
Gundam G Unit. I think that what it is. Yeah,
Mhm.
the Gundam Wing spinoff. But everything else, there's no more alternative universe
Mhm.
side stories. I know IBO had a couple too, but most
Mhm.
of them never came out of Japan or just stuck to like mobile or something like that.
Mhm.
But
I mean, G
they,
Gundam had some, but they're like lesser known ones. I mean, you've got the sequel one, which I think is the Next Generation, which is supposedly Domon and Rain's son competing in like the 14th Gundam fight, but that was never. I think off the top of my head, that was never really released outside of the original magazine run. So that's kind of
rare.
lost to history. Yeah, and it's like I've tried in vain to track down issues of that magazine, but they go for like I think one person wanted like $200 or $300 for it, and I'm like, like I'm a huge fan, but I don't really want to drop that
No,
much just
understand.
for one thing.
Yeah, especially with comic bonbon spin-offs, they're like really rare
Mm-hmm.
they're really rare to the point it's like $500, $200 for like the magazine because they never release any print runs or volumes, probably
Mm-hmm.
because of license issues or something like that.
And
But
some of them, I think it has to do with the fact that they don't want to acknowledge some of the stories
material,
that were in it.
yeah,
Like for example, too, some of the random one shot stories and stuff like that I've done in the past. There was one of the artists, Masafumi. He did Outer Gundam, Rion, and Moon Crisis, and it's interesting because he actually has a Pixiv or whatever account it is that talks a little bit about the behind the scenes setting work and stuff like that he did for Moon Crisis and a couple of the others, and he wrote actually a pretty major article that I still haven't posted yet, and I should really do it, from the old G20 magazines for the 20th anniversary of Gundam, that talked about the times where basically Sunrise and Bandai had to step in and rewrite the ship because a lot of the side stories were just all over the place.
yeah,
I mean, in the 80s, you had so many gag comics and short novellas and stuff like that people were just like, what the heck's going on? And I think that's also one of the reasons why people had a hard time accepting Gundam Sentinel at the time, too, because it was marketed as that nitty gritty, real, you know,
Gundam stuff.
Gundam. And people and I don't know if you saw some of the comments that I had posted at the time. You know, I laughed because people are like, "This isn't Gundam. What is this?" Or they were even dropping, this is a parallel world or not canon.
Yeah.
God, I hate that term. At the time, so it was interesting to see how even back in the late '80s, people were in an uproar over things like that. And I mean, it's to be understandable considering it's on the heels of Gundam Double Zeta. So
Yeah. And with Gundam, I know you made many clear things about Gundam Sentinel many, many times, and you went over with me a couple times on my old account.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate that because basically, for the longest time, Gundam Sentinel wasn't exposed enough because of like its creator or writer had some beef with Sunrise. Forgot the reasons why too. You can clear on that some stuff too.
the old licensing issues and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I wrote about that so long ago. I've forgotten some of it.
yeah.
It was there was more to it than what people had thought, and it's ironic that it's still sort of like an unfinished little situation, I guess. Um, but I think it was, I don't know where the misinformation came from, and I took a lot of flack for that too, for doing the BS debunk claim too. uh, but it was just one of those things where it's like, and that's it goes hand in hand too with why I do what I do, because it's diving down that rabbit hole to try and figure out, okay, where did this tidbit of news come from and stuff like that, or how did this start, spreading, because after a while it becomes so commonplace that people forget
Where
where
it
they
came
read
from.
it. And sometimes it's even the most random line, on a downvoted Reddit thread and stuff like that too, that sometimes people latch onto for who knows what reason.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for explaining all that. But I got some questions here you probably saw, like they're kind of some dumb ones, some smart ones, but you want them to go in any order or just like don't want to sound a bit robotic when people do interviews and magazines and whatnot. They go all, you translate interviews, it come. I know it's like translate how you word things in translation and how Japanese works, but also I've seen some in English magazines as well when interviews like it's all robotic, like you're reading a movie script.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just want because I want it to sound like a more of a conversation between you and me. If you feel me there, no
Yeah.
homo. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the Gundam fandom as a whole and how a lot of them are still being fed misinformation? You probably went on this one like a second ago. If I'm regurgitating stuff, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Uh, I don't know if I really have a comment on the fandom in general. I think that they rely too heavily on the Gundam wiki for things, which, I mean, I think after they poke around on it long enough, they realize it's full of baloney information sometimes. And I mean, I get it. It's not easy to try and run something like that with so many conflicting entries and stuff like that from people in not really like a vetting process and stuff like that. But um, I mean, for the most part, I mean, the Gundam community is insanely supportive, of things. It's like they have suggestions, recommendations for, viewing orders, different sorts of comics to
Check
read
out.
to supplement, certain series and stuff like that. And I mean, even my limited uh, interaction with like the Gunpla community and stuff like that. If you ask them for tips and tricks and stuff like that, they're usually very willing to help you and offer suggestions and stuff like that. Aside from the face script side of that, I guess, from what I've read from people, that's
Yeah.
the more toxic side of the Gunpla community, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I see there. And the other, and yeah, I'm looking over through some questions here,
I guess you meant like
and
the misinformation, like
yeah,
it. It's hard too because there's obviously that language barrier when it comes to information and stuff like that. And I mean, I do have to say, like, I mean, I give the wiki credit for what it is. They do have a wide assortment of information and stuff like that. I mean, some of it not exactly up to stuff because it was still run through like Google Translate and stuff like that. But it's something there that shows people, hey, it's out there, it exists, and
yeah,
then try and find out more about it, which either points them to my site or Twitter and stuff like that with random threads and stuff like that I do. But I think trying to weed through the misinformation is hard because I think a lot of it has to do with there being a lack of citations for certain information claims and stuff like that. And if you've ever poked around on the Japanese side of Wikipedia, they are insanely detailed when it comes to citing sources for information and stuff like that.
yep,
And that's a lot of how I've built up some of my library, was going in and being like, okay, you cited one little tiny date in this entire thing. Like, where did it come from? And it was from a random paragraph on like page like 27 of an old outdated publication. So it's like there's explanations for stuff like that. But when you go to the wiki, they've either copy and pasted from some forum or something like that, or some other site. And like I was asking when I posted online Dire Straits High Frontier timeline and stuff like that, I'm going through and I'm trying to put together sort of like a master timeline of my own and stuff like that. And I look at some of his stuff and I'm trying to figure out like, okay, where did this source come from? Because I can't find anything on the Japanese side or even you know, trying to machine translate for Chinese sites, which is terrible. That's why I tell people, I'm like, machine translation does not work very well. But like, there was one thing, he claimed that there was like a lunar coalition that was formed in like 0027 or something. And Mark Simmons had chimed in that saying that some of the stuff that's on there is his own creation. But that's the thing that happens, is that the wiki lifted that and propagated it on their site. And then from there, there's a couple of like the more famous Italian Gundam sites that have the same information listed. And then also on the a couple of the more well-known Chinese sites as well. And it had me scratching my head, because I'm like, well, holy crap. I'm like, he has it, didn't source where it came from. But then it just, you know, proliferated from there. And so, you know, that's how the snowball gets started with a lot of this stuff. And so trying to backtrack, or even, you know, change people's, you know, perception or reasoning with it proves to be, you know, almost impossible. You know, another example too is Feezy was making the comment about how the misconception that Lauren from Turn to Gundam was originally supposed to be female. And, you know, they posted the original concept art for it that showed that no, actually the original designs show Lauren had a more masculine design to it, you know. So it's like trying to put the brakes on stuff like that, because it just randomly pops out of nowhere. And I mean, there's other things too. There's the whole, Gyune was supposed to be Camille in Char's counterattack. And there's a whole litany of them that you could go into for hours on end, probably.
Yep. But didn't Camille at the end of Zeta was so like at the end his brain was fried and whatnot, and Double Zeta he kind of retired from the whole mess.
He recovered, yeah. And then it's like, if you, I guess depending on what you want to accept in the continuity, in Moon Crisis he shows up on the moon as a doctor, and he's going to treat some people. And I don't know if Fa's his assistant or she's a nurse or something, but she's there with him. So there's that whole thing showing he made a, you know, full recovery pretty much a decade later, and I guess managed to make his way through med school.
Yeah.
Among all that too. So.
Yeah. And with Judo Asto, we know what happened in Crossbone, one of the Crossbone sequels or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He was like for my memories kind of fall fuzzy. He was like a leader of like a colony or something like that with a outdated, like broken up Double Zeta.
Oh, the Gumpy or whatever. Yeah. I think he goes by the pseudonym Gray Stroke. Yeah. I think. I think that was in I think it was in Project Exodus where they featured that. It was the sort of it was coupled with the Ideon spin-off manga that Hasegawa did too. But yeah, it was the whole, we're going to take these two colonies or whatever and head for Proxima Centauri. And I'm just like, what?
Well, yep, that's how some spin-offs are. Reminds me of Star Wars when they do their spin-offs.
As one franchise I could never get into. I'm just like, no. Like, I'll stick with a little bit of Star Trek, and that's about it.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the Disney continuity. Sorry about that. Star Wars used to be one of my favorite IPs. Mm-hmm. Don't like how Disney was running things, but we're not talking about Star Wars now.
It somehow sneaks its way into discussions when it comes to continuity and stuff like that. Yeah. Whether it's for Marvel or Gundam.
DC,
so.
Yeah, Marvel, Gundam, Star Wars. Continuity problems due to too many spin-offs. Mm-hmm. And some so obscure, people, even diehard fans will probably look at you like you're on drugs.
Yeah. And there's foaming at the mouth if you prefer one side story that's not a part of the official timeline and over others.
Yep. So I know you talked about this through your Twitter account, basically on your thoughts on how Gundams are gaining popularity outside of Japan due to like Gundam Unicorn, Gundam Build Fighters, and the IBO, and now G Witch of Mercury, and your thoughts on it, on how Bandai still dropping the ball on it after how many times now? and I just want to get your input how you will do things if you're in charge of their
I'm
their
probably the worst
yeah
person to ask that question to. I guess because I'm a little bit biased with it, but like it strikes me as odd that for announcing a show to have as wide of a release as it has, I feel like they were relying more on word of mouth
yeah
and stuff like that to promote it. Like I had mentioned too, I said, this would have been the perfect opportunity to have, like a simuldub for it,
yeah
especially if it's on Crunchyroll. Which I mean,
fun roll
don't get me wrong with Crunchy and stuff like that, with the whole not paying their voice actors and stuff like that properly, and the whole issues with not paying their translators accordingly and stuff like that. But I feel like they could have really pushed it to reach more people, because they were trying to bill it, which I don't think it was really known too much to the English community, that you don't have to know anything about Gundam to get into this.
yeah
And like when I translated with some of the interview material, the producer saying that they're trying to go after that new
audience.
demographic, to resonate with the teens, because the old shows like Double O, Seed.
Oh, fudge nuggets. Hold on, people. It's starting to get good again. Sorry about internet connections and whatnot. And basically, yeah, just referencing some like material he translated a while back, and I'm really sorry about that. If it's
That's
okay,
okay.
yeah. So, anyways, we're about to explain about the whole process with the interviews, which I saw some of them that they're trying to get to the kids and whatnot. And I heard by a producer, according to your translations, that he went to observe a field trip class or something like that with some high schoolers, and he probably asked one of them a question, and one of them didn't like Gundam because it wasn't made for them.
Mhm.
Because
they
yeah,
they felt like it wasn't resonating with them, basically. And I think that's one of the things that they realized. And it's kind of interesting, because now it's like a hindsight is 2020. Because if you look at it, it's like, obviously when the first Mobile Suit Gundam came out, there was the parallels to World War II and stuff like that. And
yeah,
it's for that generation, obviously it's easier to, I don't
resonate
want to
with
say
them.
to resonate with war, but the concept made more sense. But with today's you know generation being so technologically dependent and stuff like that, okay, yes, there's you know a war going on in Ukraine right now,
Ukraine.
but do they really care about that? Are they
No.
are they worried about anything with it? No, it's like they're worried about, oh, I'm going to go, see how long I can stand in a freezer for my TikTok video or something like that. And that's the funny thing about the show too, is how it's showcasing how corporations dominate so many things,
yeah,
and even in a couple of the snippets in there had stated too that, yes, there is a government in the Ad Stella universe, but there are times where corporations have more sway over what's happening than the powers that be controlling whatever country it is and
yeah,
stuff like that, or region. So I think that was definitely a good angle to take, to kind of hit with the kids, and especially too at the school setting as well. Seeing, you, I'm sure pretty much anybody can find some sort of commonality with Stiletta being bumbling and stuff like that. I mean, when I first saw her in the first episode, I was laughing, because that was me when I was in seventh grade. I, went from
resonated with them.
private school to public school. So
Yeah.
going from having a class with like 15 kids to suddenly 30, 35, and you're like, oh God, it's like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it. I don't know what I'm doing, that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that, you know, people will be able to get into it more, and, that just seeing random chatter and stuff like that, people are like, oh, I've never watched Gundam before, but this is actually pretty cool, and then you have obviously the bad side of it, that's claiming that it's going woke with the whole
Ugh.
possible LGBTQ angle and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, you're kind of making some pretty big assumptions based off of the first episode, but props to you for trying, I guess, even though you'll probably
Okay.
be wrong in the end.
Okay. I have to
So
do some stuff. We'll back. I'll be coming. I'll be right back in a couple minutes.
sure.
So, excuse me. Okay, so I'm just gonna put this up here. About a person like wanted to know about this here. Yeah.
So pushbacks against localization and stuff like that. Um, that's the interesting thing. It's like when I first started translating some of the comics and stuff like that, I felt there was really only one way of phrasing things. Gundam thankfully hasn't had that much where there have been too many puns that I would have to worry about. I think probably the most challenging thing so far that I did have to translate was with Walpurgis and the whole shogi scene that briefly happened on one of the mobile suit decks. And that was just, I guess, struggling to make sure people understood without having to actually do a footnote. But I think there are some instances where it is better to try and find an equivalent. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that because that's essentially what you are doing when you are translating. Because I think there was an old uh, show I remember that was just full of so many pop puns. I forget what the name of it was. It was like Gravitation or something like that. But they had so many old 90s references peppered throughout that if you read it in the subtitles, you wouldn't have any idea what they were referring to unless you went back and looked. And some of them could be so obscure that finding information on them could be nigh impossible. So I think finding something equivalent at the time would work, but you also have to be careful with doing that too because not everything ages that well too. I've seen some professional translators that have used sus in their works and stuff like that, which, I mean, if that becomes part of everybody's lexicon going forward, great. But I don't know if it's going to be something that's really going to stand the test of time. And there are certainly some of them. I mean, you can think of any cheesy 80s or 90s pun, which I'll admit I've snuck into some releases here and there just for the proverbial shits and giggles, but I think for the most part, people should stop their armchair criticisms of the pros that are doing it. Because I think a lot of it too has to do with you look up a dictionary definition and think that, hey, that's what it says, so that's exactly what it should be. And if it's not, oh my God, it's the end of the world, Because you have to remember too, it's a pun. It's probably not 100% a part of the plot, unless you have something like calling Suletta, a country bumpkin, which fits, the motif for the show because she is from a faraway planet. So you have that, but for the most part, I think it should just be overlooked as I went on a rant.
So, okay. Sorry, I'm back.
No worries.
Yeah, thanks. He's a good friend of mine. So sorry about like bashing. I have to like do some stuff. I have to pray because it's sunset right now.
Oh, that's right.
So
It's after 7. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Thanks about that. And need to get back to like. Oh, hold on. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was about to like. Yeah, there.
It doesn't like me.
Yeah, I get that when I'm like on streams and whatnot. Now it's like I understand how your pain is. When I start to get onto streams, I cut off and whatnot. It sucks big time. So, anyways, your my next question is there any of your favorite works you translated so far?
I'd probably say I'm impartial to uh, the 0083 Rebellion series because that's hands down my favorite series of all. So it was interesting to see the changes that were made and stuff like that. And I think when it first came out, I was super gung ho about it. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah,
And plus, uh, Natsumoto's art is just absolutely
badass.
phenomenal. Yeah, very detailed. Puts a lot of effort into his works and stuff like that. And now that the main story is actually over with, and they're focusing on some stuff that we haven't really seen before, especially with like Mancha and the Titans and stuff like that. It'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see where he goes and what he does with it, whether he makes some
drops the ball.
redeeming, yeah, or if he makes an interesting nod to the Advance of Zeta reboot
Yeah,
Inlay series or not, with Mancha, finding his way to Mars and stuff like that.
yeah. That period needs to be explored more, even though it's really tight compared to like the 1 year war. It's like in the
Mm-hmm.
1 year war, you got like a war in some random colony, a war on Earth in Africa, for
Mm-hmm.
example. While on Zeta, you're like in like certain colonies or certain like locations,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot more tighter than the 1 year war. That's why I didn't visit it a lot.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's almost like it's easier to depict a lot of the side stories in the 1 year war, um, just because of how massive the whole conflict was, versus when you have things taking place in the Zeta time frame. It's it's more, I don't want to say it's more restricted to locations and stuff like that, but it's not as
Vast.
destructive and widespread
It's more like
as
guerrilla
the original.
warfare.
Mm-hmm.
It's like more guerrilla warfare because you're basically fighting, or you're playing as resist. Not playing video game terminology. You're in a. Sorry about that, people. Thank God I can cut this out in like interviews. I was about to say like in the Grips conflict that. Sorry about that. So all I'm saying is like basically in the Grips conflict or the Zeta time frame, basically you the main characters are a bunch of resistance fighters from various sides from like Xeon and Earth that did not like the Titans how they became this
Mm-hmm.
oppressive force of power. So basically what they did is like they fought in like various locations and using more not just more advanced mobile suits but also guerrilla warfare. You know how like guerrilla warfare in South America and other third world countries is more
Mm-hmm.
condensed rather than a world war like 1 or 2,
Right.
and it's a lot more like restricted. You cannot have like a lot of side stories, or that will contradict a lot of stuff in the of continuity wise.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my opinion on why they don't visit the Zeta time frame that much.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, too, it's like you sort of have a few of them. I mean, you have obviously the Advance of Zeta novel series, which primarily deals with the testing of the new equipment and stuff like that. But you also have them encountering, still remnants of Xeon and stuff like that, and showing that not every Titan was a bad
Evil.
guy, that sort of thing. And then you even have you have Walpurgis, which is essentially a spin-off of, Double Zeta. But even then, that's still in its own post-war, pre-Shard's counterattack category as well. even though it's only set roughly like 6 months or so after the events
Yeah.
of the series.
Yeah.
But
Double
it's
Zeta, you
interesting.
meant?
Yeah, it's interesting too how it still ties in so much from the original, but at the same token too, you're kind of questioning some of the technological aspects because they weren't really there for the original. So
Yeah. It's like what's that term? Basically, like reconning a lot of stuff.
mhm. Which is inevitable. I mean,
Yeah.
it stands to reason that if there weren't any retcons over time, I would be a little worried about Gundam, and
Yeah.
I don't think it would be um, as fluid as it is now. Um, but that's not to say that it doesn't have its this is set in stone this way, type of uh, stipulations for it. And I think the interesting thing about that is what a lot of people don't realize, when some of these comic side stories and stuff like that come out, they can't just go all willy nilly like they used to with them back in the day. Arc Performance, which does the return of Johnny Ryden comic, was actually talking about how even though it's tied into the MSVR uh, line
Time
of
frame.
suits and stuff like that, they can't. They actually have to license specific suits, specific uniforms, insignias, weaponry. They can't just slap a shield on something, which I thought was actually very interesting to hear. Um, which also further illustrates too, the length that they go to when it comes to some of these stories. Because some of them you'll look at, like, I mean, not to go back to Crossbone, but you look at it and it just seems so hastily thrown together.
Yeah.
But then, like with Arc Performance, would actually show screenshots, pics and stuff like that of some of the drafts that they put together for, some of the future chapters and stuff like that. And it's essentially like you're going through the whole planning process for an anime show. And back in the day when Gundam F90 came out, they did the same thing. That was one of the first major projects to tie in with obviously the movie and stuff like that. So they went about the whole process the same way. And I think too, it all depends on what they're looking to get out of the series overall. I think Crossbone probably had a little bit more wiggle room because a couple instances, some of the particular storylines were thrown in the magazine just for sort of like a filler of sorts. So I don't think there was much thought given to it. But then, you have other iterations like Ghost and stuff like that, where they actually sat down and went through the whole planning process and figuring out, what they were going to, where they were going to go with mobile suits, how they were going to depict them and stuff like that.
Nice. So Mackenzie critiques actually another question here. Can you ask him if he ever found the Axis Power allegories and imagery in Gundam franchise? I don't know, you spelled it wrong, tiring. And if he had in a historical period, he would like Gundam to visit even a legatory. Man, I cannot say anything today. Like you said, it delved into like Vietnam conflict imagery too with the 08MS team, for example.
I think there was a point too, I guess, where Gundam sort of went through that Nazification, I guess you can say, for the Xeon side and stuff like that. I mean, everybody knows like the parallels are there because obviously we all know the famous quote that Degwin said to Giran at the end, he, asking him, do you know who Adolf Hitler is? And I think it kind of ballooned out of control after that. But for like the Axis powers and stuff like that, it's like, yes, I can see some of them, but that's also hindsight is 2020. You're looking back on stuff so you can put two and two together. Whether or not it was supposed to be, overt at the time, I guess everybody could argue. And, like I'm going through and like Mark Simmons is going through, diving through some of the old, production interviews and stuff like that to find out those nuggets. There've been a couple of things here and there, but I don't think it's as cut and dry sometimes as people expect it to be. And I think it's better to have it open to interpretation. So, like, if you see certain things, in a particular show versus, what I see, more power to you. And I mean, that's what the guys at, Mobile Suit Breakdown are doing too. They're finding the allegories to things and stuff like that here and there. I haven't actually listened to their podcast. Sorry, Tom, don't kill me for that. But I think too, like, then to pull an example right now too, with The Witch from Mercury, interviewers have been asking what is the meaning behind the word witch, and the producer said that, hey, that's going to be open to interpretation. There will be the overall definition of what it is. When you watch it, be like, aha, so that's what it means. But everybody's going to take away something different from that in the end. As for where, like, if there's a time period of where I would like Gundam to go, that's so hard. I like some of the stuff that Kondo did with going back sort of in time to a more like World War II style fighting, like with a lot of trench warfare and stuff like that. I think that would be something cool to sort of see Gundam try and delve into. I mean, even if they did a little bit of like a rudimentary bare bones style mechanized Gundam and stuff like that. But some of the stuff that I thought was interesting too is you have like the Gundam Burai comic, which is set in sort of like a feudal era Japan, which is cool, but it's insanely hard to follow.
Yep. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. That was a pretty good spin-off where you talk about Burai and whatnot, which is basically a spin-off, basically based on like the Sengoku era Japan, feudal era Japan and whatnot, and it features like samurai like mobile suits and whatnot, and how the Gundams are basically like more like katakuri like puppet like mobile suits, like like katakuri based like a wooden puppet in Japan, like it's like you control the puppet like it's a wooden puppet. That's what basically a mobile suits basically is. So like, yeah, I was basically telling about the audience here, whoever catched on, is that I'm basically explaining about Gundam Burai and how the mechanics of the mobile suits are basically like katakuri puppets, or those wooden puppets are basically how they are. What I'm saying here?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically which I really loved about Burai, but I haven't followed that recently as much Gundam spin-offs as of late, because I was like busy. Like I'm having like don't kill me here. I'm having like anime burnout at the moment, so
right.
So I was basically checking out a show called Gang of London. So I'm about to go off a little topic here. It's a British TV show. A friend, Mackenzie, recommended me. It's the best TV I ever saw in 5 years.
What's it called?
Gangs of London. It's basically like a really dark crime drama in modern London.
Oh, I think I saw that before. I'll have to add it to the list.
Yeah. It's the best TV in 5 years.
Who's streaming it? NBC Peacock?
I don't remember who.
I'll find it somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, so about going off the topic here, because of going from Gundam Burai to like basically like to like random TV shows, the best TV show in 5 freaking years. So basically, I like more Gundam to be more like in like alternative universe that doesn't follow the format of like 2 different sides, the Earth Federation, like government, and the Zeonic XBs fighting a war for independence and yada yada. Gundam Burai was a fresh breath of fresh air on that, as well as Witch of Mercury and G Gundam as well. So before we continue, my opinion on like basically on my version of Gundam, if I was in charge or decided to be in charge, I made a fan fiction long ago. It was about like two people. It's my memory's fussed. Like I don't remember any fan fictions. I just slapped it in together, and it's basically like these guys on 2 different sides of the war, and they're like one's is like this rich, it's this sheltered rich kid, and one's
Mhm.
like a guy who's like trying to like prove himself to to his people and whatnot, and they have like not just conflicts within the war, but conflicts within their societies as a whole and their roles in it.
Mhm.
You know, it's like fan fiction I made. You can't find. It's like all screwed up and whatnot.
Back in the days of fanfiction.net.
Yep. And another thing was basically how it ties one of them. Like I, if I wanted to write for a Gundam fanfic, because when I write for fan fiction, I had to like be really tight with continuity because I have this thing with respect the original author's intentions or the corporate side of things.
Mhm.
Even though some of their decisions suck, but I must fit it into within their time frame
Mhm.
because I don't like disrespecting the work or viewpoints. You know what I'm saying here?
Right.
But my other version would be more like Armored Core, that video game series, like with
Mhm.
corporations fighting with supremacy using like mercenaries that pilot armored cores.
Mhm.
So it's basically more to lines of that as well, fighting for resources and I
Mhm.
haven't gotten to like the brainstorming process of that yet. So I'll mostly expand Gundam on that too. But
Mhm.
let's go back to the recent the one of the previous questions that you said like the kids are cannot I sorry the children the kids or the young audience cannot resonate with the previous Gundam shows because basically it's too not just too over dramatic, but also it's themes like anti-war and whatnot. Like they don't resonate with war. They mostly resonate with like corporations and whatnot, like you said,
Mhm.
and they're mostly trying to expand more materials on how to like give Gundam to the new generation. Mostly people like I'm speaking of more of like a Western side of things. Like people wanted to go into can't go into Gundam because it's over dramatic. The entries are too old. The
Mhm.
whole Earth Federation versus Zeons. Like, do I really give a crap about this? Like, while they care about Dragon Ball Z power levels and Shonen
Mhm.
Jump.
Right. And I mean, it is difficult to try and find a good entry point to it because so many things, especially with the Universal Century, are dependent upon prior knowledge uh, to a lot of things. But I mean, in that regard too, I think Unicorn was also instrumental in getting people on board because yes, it was. Well, I guess I can't really say it that way because this is my bias coming through again. Uh, I guess I've read that people, have watched it and they didn't 100% understand a lot of the references that were made and stuff like that, but they were still able to enjoy the story.
Yeah.
Um, they could understand what was going on, the main conflict. And I mean, they even got the whole gist of the side co-prosperity sphere that was being toted by Frontal and stuff like that. Um, but then they said like going backwards to try and find other stuff, it's like, oh god, like what do you watch? Do you watch the 43 episode TV show or do you watch the 3 movies that cut things out? Do I watch the Zeta series or do I go with the new
Movies.
translation, which would then, okay, I'm going to turn around and watch uh Double Zeta, but wait a minute, why is Camille still weird here when he was perfectly fine at the end of the movies? Or why is Axis suddenly back when you saw it traveling away, at the end? So you have discrepancies and stuff like that with it.
Yup.
But, and then two, it's like, when you look, it's like the series are so long in and of themselves too.
Yeah.
I think if we had more OVA style, shows that were 12 episodes or, even
6.
26, it would make it a little bit easier for people to watch. And I mean, yeah, you had Double O and IBO split their seasons and stuff like that, but that's still, you know, almost 50 episodes right there
Yup.
of stuff to trawl through.
Yep.
So I think it's a huge turnoff for people.
A
If they
lot
did
of people.
if they did more compilation movies, they might, you might be able to get around that, but you're still missing, like, if you don't want to know like side quests like the whole Salt episode,
Yeah.
obviously you don't need that in the movie, but it's a neat little treat, thereafter. Or like the Time Be Still episode with the bombs being strapped to the Gundam, or Amuro encountering his mom and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that reminds me of this one Gundam movie, which is basically the infamous Dawn's Island episode.
Mhm.
That was a pretty good movie. How it's like basically how it like recon needed like it's like a needed remake of that episode. They turned it into a movie.
They changed some things for the better and for the worse, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, it depends on who you ask. Because if you look and you see the message that was there in the original episode versus the message that they have now, there's still that slight disconnect between the two. But I mean, for the most part, it was campy and fun.
yeah, yeah. Mobile suit battles, whatever. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I'll let me get back to my other question here. So the question is, how do you actually get a hold of rare Gundam medium, even in Japan, if you had any?
So basically, when I started building my collection, I had no idea that you could actually order a lot of the books from Amazon Japan at the time. Uh, so I basically hit the Yahoo Japan auction circuit, and that's where a bulk of my stuff has come from, along with places like Mercari and stuff like that, that has a lot of the used material. But probably for the last 10 or 12 years now, I've been basically buying stuff as it's come out from Amazon Japan. So it's finding the older archaic stuff that's more of a challenge.
Yep. I heard figures because it's like going through Star Wars again. Example, like you get these old materials and they're really hard to find, despite some like being like really loved in the fandom, but couldn't or really so obscure that people think
Mm-hmm.
it's like you're on drugs. But when
Yeah.
you try to find some of those old materials, like a headache, and people want a lot of money for it.
Mm-hmm. Like for
So
example, like I know you can see part of it back here,
yeah,
but
is that
the poster
uh
is the
Gaia
Gaia
Gear?
Gear Alpha. Yeah,
Yeah.
like that was in a random issue of New Type
Mhm.
uh, from I think one of the early on runs of it, and I had picked up one of the old copies. I think it was for like $5 when I was
Wow.
trying to grab the collection, and it was in there. I was like, oh my god, like this is awesome. I've been looking for it, and like you go and you look, and like some auction sites want like $100+ for it, and I'm like, I don't think I'd spend that much on it. Or even I think it's uh, Kitazume's nude depiction of Everly Key, the love interest of Frenchie in it. Her poster too is just as much, if not more, just because of the fact that it's hyper rare.
Yeah. Anything about Gaia Gear is super duper rare now. Like it's like Heat Reconquista and Cheat to me. It's like it is Gundam, but it's not Gundam at the same time. And it's to me, it's like a alternative universe spin-off of the Universal Century, but it's not a Gundam show.
Mhm.
The whole premise sounds like really nonsensical at first. Like it's basically a Char clone basically a little Char clone, not like the helmet and the mask, a literal clone.
Yep. And it was all from Tomino's desire to escape from the confines of Gundam.
Yeah,
And it's hysterical because he lamented after the fact that despite his best intentions, he still failed
do
to
that.
completely break away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, because if the biggest mistakes he did was basically it relies in its backstory of the Universal Century. Big mistake number one. It's in the same universe. And the
Mm-hmm.
man machines, or known as mobile suits in those times, like they still look like and act like mobile suits, despite
Mm-hmm.
like looking really cool and dope. And
Mm-hmm.
number three, the main character is basically a freaking Char clone, not the mask trope, a literal flesh and bone clone.
Mm-hmm. Which I
And
think at the end, he said he rips the chip out or something. I haven't read the story in forever, so I've forgotten. And plus, too, the radio drama version is different. But basically, it turns into yeah, I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm going to go live my own life. Sorry,
yeah, the trope,
please.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So how do you balance your workday and translating Gundam material for non-Japanese fans? I'm like basically reading these questions off.
Well, let's see. It's between having two jobs and going to school again.
Okay.
It's a pain in the butt sometimes. Usually, it's like when I wake up, like I'll finish my work and I'll just plug away at chapters or random things and stuff like that, or go down too many rabbit holes because someone asks me a question or something like that, and
Yeah.
that's when you'll find me launching into a thread
Triage.
ranting about something
Yep.
because I find it interesting, or whatnot. But for the most part, I mean, it's like I try and have a relatively structured uh, process for doing things. It's like I try doing at least a chapter of a comic a day if I can, even if it's just a baseline, quick, gritty translation version that I'll file away and then come back to and review later on and stuff like that.
Interesting.
But
So you,
it's harder now because I mean I have free time, but I don't spend it wisely right now, which is why I dumped 3,000 plus pages over the summer because I didn't. I was only working one job for the summer, so it was a great time to play catch up.
yeah,
Even though
100.
it took me
Yeah.
like a decade to catch up.
Yeah. People had lives and like jobs and whatnot. And we wanted to ask that because it's basically really hard to like balance and really your daily job to pay the bills and rent, so you not be homeless, and some stuff, some money on the side to buy those materials.
Hmm.
Because that stuff ain't freaking cheap.
No, I mean it's like, and that's the sad thing. It's like usually everything is super dirt cheap. It's just the shipping costs
Ugh.
that get you. But I mean now it's like,
Yeah,
uh, I mean last time I looked at the yen to dollar conversion,
yeah,
it was like 150 yen to $1 American, which is awesome because everything that I want that's expensive is super cheap right now. So
yeah. But you're kind of broke with paying the bills because everything's rising in cost over here.
right.
Yep, it's kind of sad, man. Yeah, then your process. Yeah, another question is your process of translating material like manga to information books, for example. How you do your process of it? Like,
You like, how do I go about doing it, or just like in general, like how do I pick like whether I want to do a comic or some page from a reference book or something?
basically, like how the process of how you do you tackle those projects, like the steps how you do it, or how the process works.
So for me, it depends on what I'm like, what series I'm working on. If it's something like Rust Horizon that's currently being serialized, I have to I have to think about it a little bit more because you don't have the luxury of looking ahead to see, what type of foreshadowing and stuff like that is going to happen. Versus something like, Moon Gundam that I let go for a little bit. I can be careful with how I phrase stuff in past volumes that was made, more clear in future installments. Um, but for the most part, if I'm doing it right away, obviously I'll read the magazine when it comes out or
Yeah,
the volume, when it's released, and then I'll walk away from it, and then I'll go back and I'll read it a second time to make sure I understood what was trying to be conveyed in some instances, and then I'll sit down and I'll start doing like a rough draft translation in Notepad, which thankfully I've upgraded to Notepad Plus, so I have a bad habit of not saving documents, so I lost many
yep,
translations over the years. I'll sketch out something rough in there, um, and then I'll slap it over into Grammarly to edit my horrible renditions, and then I'll sit there and I'll start nitpicking. It's like, okay, this sounds entirely too literal for what I want to say here, so I'll make my best effort
yeah.
to not, I want to say punch it up, but make it not read super stilted um, for the most part. And then once that's
Yeah,
done, I'll start photoshopping things, and then I'll give it a quick cursory quality check before I slap it up. And usually it's like once I actually have the text on the pages and stuff like that, it makes editing a little bit easier because I see some things a little bit better in context and I can phrase it a little bit better than how I had it before. But sad thing is usually I have 40 million afterthoughts because of some of the audiobooks that I listen to when I'm at work. I'm like, oh, I should have dropped that in
Yeah.
as for this particular scene. I was like, it would have been a neat nod to see if anybody got it or whatnot, which I actually did in Moon Gundam.
Yeah.
I was listening to. Oh my god, I am totally drawing a blank on that series now. It's by Craig Allenson. It's a sci-fi series. What is the name of it again?
Yeah, everyone gets like that. You can't reference the series at the point, and I get that. Like, I can't think about it such as like
Ah,
I just say like the science fiction series, but
you're you're breaking up there, just so you know. I think I lost you.
yeah, I'm back.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
So basically,
Expeditionary Force was the novel that I was listening to
yeah,
for those of you that like sci-fi books.
yeah. So basically, it's a science fiction book that he lost the name of at the moment. So I get that too when you want to like reference something, but you can't get it off your head at the moment because you're into another thought that relates to another question. And
My brain is a raging dumpster fire of thoughts.
yeah, yeah, like that, man. Yep. So that's really interesting how you're able to how the process works and everything. Besides being a one man team, because normal people like normally it's a team of people. There's the scannulators and whatnot that don't know how they work, but how you work, you just buy your own material and just like translate it. There's a thought process how this will be done. There's like you know how Japanese works, and you translate it to English, it sounds like really robotic and whatnot, which doesn't make sense to the non-Japanese reader. Because when you read like other books and whatnot in like really badly translated material, it sounds real. It oh crap! Come on. Okay. Yeah. Hold on. My is it me or my connection's really bad? Yeah, it's my internet connection now. It's quality, not just that, but also if you read like not other non-Japanese books, like in Arabic or so, it's like translated into like a really, really bad like translation. Like for example, it's like yeah, it's somehow I'm like getting internet frizzes. There, I'm back now. Yeah, we're both getting internet problems. Damn you, Comcast.
It's because they dropped
Yeah,
G4 TV. That's why.
yeah. Exactly. Like basically, I will explain to them how translations, where you like read from like one language to the other, and it's like super terrible and whatnot, and it's like,
Mhm.
what the hell is this? Like it sounds like weird, like it's badly grammared, structured. It's like so robotic and whatnot. How it's like, and that's
That,
why what the term
that's
Woollyism came to be because name of Ted Woodsley with Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI
mm,
and how he able to do all that with a time frame as well as using the SNES's like capabilities, what they can be put on there. But
mm.
you know how like some people on Twitter be like, oh, you're messing up the translation quality. I know it's like for kids, it's like guilty of like making translators look really, really horrible because they're unnecessary cuts on anime and how
Mhm.
Tokyo Pop on their mangas and whatnot with Estray and the Gundam material. I have some of their Gundam material because my mom got me those, and I
Mhm.
read your tweet and I look back on those books and I'm like, this is really this is actually not that good of a translation. It's like a four kids translation, unlike a Woollyism.
It's interesting what they did with it. I mean, part of it hews to the story, but it's like they wrote a dub script for it. Basically, that's the only comparison that
Yeah.
I could come up with. And some of it, like I look and I'm just I scratch my head
Right.
over some of the choices that they made with it, but it's a product of its time too. So that's
Yeah.
when you really didn't have
Exactly.
as many quality checks in place. And
Yeah.
plus, it makes me
Sunrise
wonder too whether they got a lot of their licensing for cheap, so they really didn't have to worry about
care.
too much,
Yeah.
versus now where there's obviously a lot more involved in the process overall.
Yeah. Like Bandai just says, "Here, take this and do and hope it sells."
Yeah,
Instead of like
it's
being on behind watching them behind their back and correcting them.
it's almost like they
Like
did a ghost stories with the translation in some
yep.
instances.
Yeah. Like they didn't care. Yeah. So if you have another, it's a stupid question, but it's okay. I can answer this. Did any Japanese fan discover you, or you didn't interact with them, and your thoughts about them, the Japanese fandom as a whole, or don't interact with them too much?
Uh, I don't interact too much with them because I've found in the past that some of them can be a bit standoffish. Um, but I
Just
do
like
have
the
a
Star Wars
couple.
fans.
Right. I mean, I do have a couple of followers that I interact with every now and again, and it's a huge asset. It actually works both ways because sometimes I'll find something in a that's obscure that they had forgotten about or they didn't realize was in there. So then they'll look at it and then launch into their own threads with it and whatnot. But I mean, a couple of times I've interacted with some of the manga artists and stuff like that. And like one of them, for example, was the one who did the Return of the Lion manga adaptation of the radio drama. And I remember when it was being serialized uh, in Gundam Ace, there were some glaring spelling issues with it. Like I think they put uh, what did he have? He had Xeon Republic, I think, instead of Republic.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to him and said, hey, just to give you, an FYI, like not to be rude, but this isn't spelled right. I said it should be Republic of Xeon. Like Xeon Republic hasn't been used since the heyday of things. And he responded thanking me for it, and made the joke that English is hard, and then actually reached out later on and asked me how to phrase one of the banners that they were depicting in it when there was protests going on, and it was I think I went with gather under.
Oh come on, man. Okay, so sorry about that. Is it my connection? Dropping issues. Never had that before, and it's fine. Sorry about that, people. Just like give me a second here. Yep. Damn it. Let's put this here again. Damn. Is it like hold on. Thank God I can edit this part out. So excuse me, people. Just like uh technical technical difficulties here. Blah. So sorry about that. So now it's on his end again. Now my end. Hold on. That. Yeah. How the hell? So here, just like sorry about that, people. Just like trying to see what is wrong here. Damn you, Comcast or Verizon, one of the two. Never had this type of problem before. Like one's from England had no problems, the others in like the U.S. and it has a problem. God damn, man. Comcast dropping connections, beautiful. It's getting good too how the process works and everything. And how the hell? Damn it. God. Really sorry about that. Like thoughts on my end. Like, thank God I can edit this out. So the quick recap is like, thank you. I'll test my connection after this happens again. That's now it happens on both of us. So it's our internet provider. Or mine or yours, one or two. But anyways, what we are saying is basically you got into the process. You reached out to one of the mangaka for a Gundam spinoff, and you reached out for him was to correct a spelling mistake, and you want to be polite and kind, and then he thanked you for it, and then the other time he reached out to you and said, "Can you help me with this with some signs and whatnot in English? Because I don't speak English. I don't sound like really bad, but." And then the whole fiasco happened.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was actually surprised by it. He reached out and said, hey, it showed me like one of the working documents that he had. He's like, this is how I have it phrased. He's like, what do you think about this? And so, I offered a suggestion to make it a little bit more natural sounding. And I honestly didn't think he would
Do
make any
that.
changes and stuff like that. But when it actually came out, I was all like, hey, I was like, he listened. I was like, that's so cool.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
random dude on the internet like listened
Corrected
to.
him.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And then it's like you have some artists where you're just like, hey, you spelled this wrong, and it's just like radio silence. It's like, oops,
Oh,
sorry.
like you pissed him off.
Like, yeah, it's like, why are you reading this and why are you telling me,
What to do?
what to do?
Yeah.
Which like was not my intention and stuff like that, obviously, but it's like it's one of those things that I I laugh in frustration because I'm like, it's 2022 and we still have
English. Who the hell keeps? Let me test my internet connection. Now. So, okay. So, sorry about that again. Just testing my internet connection, see if it works. I disconnected, reconnected. Like, is it the equipment or it's the like, like, like something like that? Like, I don't know. Hold on, see if it works. Oops. So let me test this again. So, oh my god, stable. Okay, so hopefully back on together now. Now it's a bit better now. So yeah, now he has to test on his end. So I'm really sorry about the whole technical difficulties. Yeah. I'm back now. Just had to test my internet side of things. Like it's basically dropping here and there, like going up and down and whatnot. It's like really frustrating. Yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, like it's going whenever we like you speak or I speak, it just drops and it's frustrating. So thank God we're almost done this. So and thank God I got video editing software. Thank you for your patience and my people and my followers, whoever stuck behind me, patience. Like again, I'm really sorry about that. It's like really frustrating. Like I tried to like be like polite as I can while you cut off. Like, I don't want to like go on a rampage, but like I was like really like
It's my rant detector.
yeah, yeah. So thank God it's doing a lot better now. So I think there's one more question after this. So let me just get to my notes real quick here, and I think you answered all my questions so far. Oh, one more
Am
question.
I am I infamous or famous?
Yeah, is or famous. Yeah,
I don't know if I should answer that question or not.
it's the internet, dude. But I don't. If you don't want to answer that question, that is fine.
I,
So
I laugh at that. I mean, obviously, I've done this for quite a long time, but I think part of the misconception that people have about me is that I'm this like supreme asshole.
yeah,
Pardon my French, but I think that has to do with not being able to infer, you know, intonation and stuff like that from tweets and forum posts and stuff like that.
yeah,
Uh, but I there are a lot of people out there that get triggered by me, and it's just the most confusing thing ever. I'm talking about like seething, foaming at the mouth, rage at the mere mention of me or anything that I do, and I laugh so much at that because I'm like, if some random guy on the internet gets you that hot and bothered, it's like I'm just gonna blow some more kisses to my adoring fans. Then, like, it's like, what is it the kids say now? Go touch grass. I
yeah.
think.
Go
Uh,
touch grass. Get
I'm
a
like,
lot. No, not get a lot. It's old school.
yeah,
Like go. Yeah, go. I'm not
get away.
good in that thing. I'm old.
Yeah.
I'm just real getting old now. So the question I want to ask you, like, is there any other work that you despise working on and you glad it ended or you just dropped it?
Well, I mean, I've technically never dropped anything,
Yeah,
despite what some people think. It's just it gets pushed further and further down the pile.
yeah,
Uh, I think, you know, when I was commissioned to do Ghost, that was a terrible slog for me. Not so much that I hated it. I think it was because there was so many just stupid speech bubbles in it. Like, how many times are you going to have a character sit there go, oh no, oh god, you know, like, and it's like when you're trying to come up with a different way to express shock, awe, exasperation. I'm just like,
yeah,
I'm like, and that's what bugs me the most about some of them is when they have, and that's what he's known for so many of his, like, he's got a lot of stammering characters. There's a lot of exasperated outbursts and stuff like that, and it's an annoyance that takes away from the actual plot of some things. But I think one of the series that I was happy to finish was probably Char's Deleted Affair, which I think is starting to gain some more bizarre traction now from what I've seen with people who, you know, didn't know that it was out there. And I think it was primarily because of the whole I'm going to wear a short skirt in front of Char and try and woo him because he's such a hunky guy and I want a piece of him type thing. And I'm like, that is not Haman at all.
yeah,
And I'm like, you were involved with some of this stuff, dude. Like, how did you even come up with, like, you just, like, even if you went with Tomino's novels and the backstory that was presented there,
yeah,
you know, it's like you have her sister being taken to be a concubine for Dozel, you know, like that in
yeah,
and of itself should have been enough to kind of
Be a
which was
backstory.
cute. But when you have such a quick spin towards the end of the series, it's like, did you kind of? It makes me wonder. It's like, were you just trying to wrap this up super quick,
Yeah.
or you went from woohoo giddy schoolgirl to grimderp overnight over one little tiny thing, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
for the most part, I don't hate anything that I work on because obviously I wouldn't be working on it if I didn't, you know, enjoy it. But there are some things that I wish would finish up faster than others.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting example of that, man. Really respect that. Like, basically, you want to just drop it, but dropping's not my thing, so I must continue till it ends.
And it might take me forever to get to it, but I eventually do get to it.
Yeah.
And to my credit, as odd as it sounds, time does escape you, you know. And it's, yeah, I have probably too many projects that I start because, again, it has to do with the whole combating the misinformation because people, you know, start spot things about something, and I'm like, nope, this is actually what happens in the chapter. Oh crap, here we go, start this, you know.
Yeah.
Which is why I was kind of glad that I was able to catch up a little bit during the summer. But
Yeah.
you know, when I sit there and I think about it, it's like, okay, I was supposed to finish up, you know, the Photoshop work on Moon Gundam at the end of summer before I had classes, but you know, a couple of things popped up and I was like, oh, I'll get to it. And now I'm looking and I'm like, okay, we're at the middle of October and I was supposed to try and have that out 2 months ago. Crap, where did the last, you know, few weeks go?
Yeah. Time
I've
flies
got,
fast. Okay.
I've got
Stop
volume
that.
10 coming out at the end of the month too that I have to work on. So I'm like, oh God, double whammy time.
Yeah. I understand. Basically, it's a lot of work to catch up on. You just put it further down the back burner to move on to other stuff.
And then when you get
Basically,
pulled 40 different ways to
get back to it.
answer questions and stuff like that, it's like, oh yeah, I really should go back to that. And then I start working on it and I forget. I'm like, oh crap, what voice did I give this character? So then I have to go back and reread, you know, the previous volumes that I had to familiarize myself with it again. And it gets even harder the longer that I take between
Yeah.
projects. So I'm like, maybe I should just start over.
Yeah. Yep, that's really cool. So, basically, any last words before we conclude this podcast, despite its wonderful problems?
Thank you for listening to my train wreck of thoughts. I'm normally not that scatterbrained, but this is honestly my first interview / podcast that I've done. So maybe next time I'll have my thoughts a little bit more organized. But I do want to say, you know, to everyone that watches this, thank you so much for following along with my crazy adventure. You guys definitely make doing what I do worthwhile, and I really enjoy, you know, hearing feedback from you guys and seeing you enjoy a lot of the series that I make available for you guys in English.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that, and thanks you for dropping by, despite having all these connection issues on both of our end. And one of our audience basically told me to just check out my internet connection, and I did a little quick test, and it works better now. So really appreciate you guys, the two people that stayed. Really appreciate that because it's a small podcast after all. So thank you for taking your time being on it. Sorry about asking you out of the blue. Hey, you want to be part of my podcast? Because not just you're a fellow Gundam fan, but also your translation works and how and you're most of them whoever came a Gundam fan whoever came on the internet who read a scanlation of a manga, that's probably done by you. About like 85% of the time, to be honest.
Yes, that is true. There are others that are picking up the slack now, which is good. I don't want to say slack because it's not stuff that I'm working on, but there are other people stepping up to the plate, which is definitely helpful, and in some regards, depending on, you know, who's doing what, I should say. But
Yeah.
for the most part, the more we can get out there, the more people can enjoy, and hopefully at some point on down the line, we can get more licensed. But I hold my
Highly
breath on
doubt.
that.
Yeah, same here. Like basically with manga stuff about manga, like there's just one series called Holy Land by Morty Koji. Don't know why manga published manga licensors are not picking that up.
Hmm.
For example, or like with various Gundam side stories, that they're not picking up because it won't be an easy sell for American audiences or Western audiences. My bad.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing too. That it's like it's one thing to look at gunplay sales and stuff like that because that's obviously
Bread butter.
extremely prolific across the globe. And I mean now to the point where everything's locked behind P Bandai purchases and stuff like that. Um, and you can find some on auction sites or scalpers and whatnot. But when it comes to comics and stuff like that, it's like there's a lot more behind the scenes that a lot of people don't understand. And with Gundam, obviously there's the licensing cost for the actual um, IP, for the series that you want to release. And it's not something that you can do, oh, I'm just going to do like the first 3 volumes to see whether or not it sells. It's like, so, if you have something like the Origin, if they had done that from the get-go, you've got 24, 25 volumes. You can't just pull like what Viz did back in the day and stop early on because it didn't turn out to be profitable. You are in it for the long haul. And the same thing happened too with the Legend of the Galactic Heroes novelization that people clamored about for the longest time, and it did less than stellar for their book print for Viz. So that ended up, I think, shuttering shortly thereafter. Not that novel series was the cause for it, but it's just because people clamor for it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to turn around and buy it off the shelves.
Yeah, I bought the audiobooks, so I did my part.
It was very interesting listening to a very British
Version
narration
of it.
for it. It was not what I was expecting.
Yes. Mostly for that, if they want to go for a British vibe, they should have been. It would have been vibe for in mind for the Empire, basically, to have that uptight British royal voice compared to like the Federation of Planets. I haven't watched that series in a bit, so I need to get back to watching that. I really loved. It's a really long series, so you have to take it by piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to take too much of your time, and I'm about to end this podcast before we're basically like this thing shuts down again. So till then,
end it while the going's good.
Yeah. So, anyways, if you enjoy this podcast, please share this video around the internet, on Twitter, on forums, or whatever, and leave a like or a thumbs up or a comment, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that blue bell for notifications. And one more thing, people, if you're in a fandom and if there's people who are famous for what they do, like fan translation work or really huge in the fandom, please, if you have a podcast or like a blogger post or anything like that, or a YouTube channel, feel free to interview them. And if you have I don't have a budget for my podcast, so basically like I basically have like this like $45 microphone and my computer webcam for all I care, because basically I don't like doing all that fancy YouTuber, VTuber type BS, because I'm Omega Katana and I'm me, and not like not like a corporate made product to make money.
Sometimes simpler is better.
Exactly. So till then, people, this is your boy the Omega Katana signing off, and have a great night. Till then, see you soon.